What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad Podcast. Today, I am stoked to have a good conversation with Joshua Brooks. Just a pre-call, we've had a lot to chat about, so I'm really, or the pre, right before I hit record, so I'm really looking forward to it now that we have a record going and I can ask a bunch of questions that I want to ask. So that said, Joshua, if you can, please go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us about your family, and tell us about your business.
Thanks, Adam. As Jay-Z said, allow me to introduce myself.
There we go. The rapping chaplain.
The name is Hove, H to the O-V. So, as Adam said, my name is Joshua Brooks. I am the husband to Stephanie. We have been married a long and challenging and beautiful and wonderful 8 years, 9 coming up in September, and father of 4 young boys, Joshua Jr., Hudson, Micah, and Sammy, and they are 7, 5, 4, and 1. No daughters, if you're wondering. And I am an Army veteran of 21 years, and I'm currently a chaplain. For all of you hoo-hoo folks out there, I was active duty Army, so don't get out of line. You better check yourself. And was enlisted, and then God called me to be a chaplain and to provide for the spiritual needs and provide spiritual support to soldiers, as well as advise the commander. And now also a entrepreneur, and went live with my company January 31 after the Texas Board of Securities approved our application, regulators, government compliance, you know the deal, Exponential Advisors. So doing financial planning as well for Army veterans, busy mommies, and Christian leaders.
Awesome. That sounds like you got your hands full. 4 kids, new business, and in the Army Reserves.
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
And as you mentioned beforehand, the rapping chaplain, so this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Should be fun, Adam.
So I want to rewind. I always like to ask about upbringing, just to kind of understand where you come from, and especially your dad and the kind of influence that dads have on us, especially as men. And I'd love to kind of just understand a little bit of your background, where you come from. Tell me a little bit about your dad, who he was, what he meant to you, and kind of what that looked like for you growing up.
Yeah, thank you. So I had actually 4 father figures. So I know that's a hard pill to swallow right off the jump. That's my pill, but God in his grace continues to provide for us. So my biological father, Fred Brooks Jr., my parents divorced when I was 1. So they were in Missouri. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and my mother, Donita. And so he was just kind of caught up in some psychological nonsense and criminal activity. And so he actually died, Adam, when I was in 4th grade. So I was a teenager, about did I say 7th grade, and 13 years old, 12, 13 years old, in the early 90s. And so that was sad. I'd only visit him just a little bit when I would visit my grandparents, Grandpa and Granny Brooks, out in Holden, Missouri. And then the second father figure, not so helpful, alcoholic, abusive, physically and verbally, stepfather. The third one was decent. That was a 10-year relationship. When I was in high school in Houston, I grew up in H-Town, Astros, Houston Rockets, and then throwback, the Houston Oilers. And so then the last one, my mom married Gary in 2005. They're still together and going strong. And so he's been the most stable and decent. Unfortunately, he's not a follower. My parents are not followers of Jesus Christ. But they love us, their children, his 2 daughters, my stepsisters, and then I have 2 younger brothers, Derek and Colton, and we have the same mother they have that second father figure, Charles Chaplain. And so that's a little bit about my upbringing and background in terms of father figures.
Hey, everybody, wanted to step in to discuss something. If you're anything like me, you've ran into some time in your business where you feel a little overwhelmed with some of the mundane tasks that eat up your valuable time. You're working more in the business than you are on the business, right? If that's you and you're hearing this and you're saying, boy, it is time to reclaim some of my schedule back, to focus on what truly matters. You want to get time back with elite remote talent with zero time zone hassle. Check out one of my partners that I just recently partnered up with, WiseVAs.com/Adam is where you go to check these folks out. Delegate $10 an hour tasks to focus more on the $1,000 an hour tasks, the things that are really transforming your business. Get rid of some of those transactional things and do some more of the transformational inside of your business. So again, schedule your free strategy call at WiseVAs.com/Adam. Wise, WiseVAs.com/Adam. Again, let's get rid of some of those transactional tasks and move them into transformational tasks. It's been a phenomenal team to work with. I really look forward to sharing them with you. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to discuss with you what's going on as well. But again, WiseVAs.com/Adam. Thank you very much. And now back to the episode. Well, I would imagine, I couldn't imagine losing my father at seventh grade, right? But yet you mentioned not really seeing him very much to begin with. So what kind of impact did that have for you growing up? And you moved away and then you only got to see your dad once in a while, but you had this alcoholic father kind of intermixed in the middle of all of that. What was that alcoholic father figure, I should say, intermixed in the middle of all that? How did you feel like that was affecting you at that time? And if you look back on it, how do you feel like it affected you now? Because while you're going through it, very different than looking back on it now.
Yeah, it still impacts me to date, right? Like that stuff is your family of origin. That's kind of their deep Freudian issues, your Jungian psychoanalysis. So with my biological father, when you're a kid, you don't really know, right? Like you just kind of grow up and you assume like this is how it is, and so I remember a story where when I found out, and I was raised in a nominal Catholic background. So in Kansas City, I would go to the Catholic school and did First Communion. And then in Houston, occasionally visit the Catholic parish, St. Justin's Martyr in Houston. And so I remember riding my bike in the neighborhood and going to the Catholic church and just sitting in that empty church wondering, like, why did my biological father get killed? Why, his body was found by the Missouri River by 2 turkey hunters. So he was actually involved in negative activity. So he was murdered. And so it was just seeking answers. And God met me in that place when I was a young boy in a powerful, tangible way. So looking back on that was a formative experience for me. And then with my stepdad, him being alcoholic and abusive, I watched him physically restrain my mom, and she's got the mascara running down. It's very dramatic. And it's taken me a long time to get counseling and process through that. And we can touch on a recent retreat that I went on as well in our conversation, where I've been able, through counseling and using EMDR, to really get distance from that and integrate it into my life in a way where I don't really, have any more negative dreams or nightmares or the kind of that aggression towards that negative stepfather. And it was even today that I was like, dang, that is so far away from me based on the counseling and the work that I've done. It's just tremendous.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine. I could not imagine. I mean, we talk about a lot of that stuff as both military guys in the military, right? The traumatic experiences, but everybody has a traumatic experience in one way or another, and how we deal with it really changes kind of our way forward on that. When you talked about how the recent experience has helped you kind of separate yourself from that, or at least give you some distance, maybe not separate yourself, but give you some distance from it to where it's not as much salt in that wound, if you will. What kind of ways did you work through it or deal, or what kind of ways was it affecting you as you were growing up until you finally started to actually deal with it?
Yeah, so I remember going to counseling at TCU when I was an undergrad and, talking about the same typical issues of relationships and family conflict and dating or interactions or pornography or, whatever, kind of your typical college issues, right? And so I've been intentional about my mental health, like from day one. As Drake says, these are my day ones, And so,
If you go too much down more rap things, I'm totally going to get lost. I don't know.
Yeah.
If
I mean,
if
we
it's
can
rap
go to
post
Jay-Z.
2000, I'm lost. So.
Okay, you're good. Yeah, we won't go to Future or some of those newer rappers, Little Uzi Vert or whatever.
Lost me already. I'm gone. Yep.
Yeah, but we stuck with Drake and Jay-Z so far, so I think we're in fair territory. And or Notorious. I'm growing up like they thought I would. Call the Crips.
There we go.
It's all good. Red love, baby. But counseling, I remember another counselor named Claire Cheney in Dallas when I was at Dallas Theological Seminary, just getting practical, using military resources as well. So those were not, I didn't have to pay for, those resources, whatever. I can't remember the program off the top of my head. Military One Source, right? And then Elizabeth, I can't remember her last name. She was at a private university in Houston. So kind of in a period when I was doing chaplain training. It just really helped me to kind of just get it out there. And so over time, like I said, with EMDR, I've done that some. And then I recently went on a psychedelic retreat for veterans with Heroic Hearts Project and returned. It was in Peru, Tarapoto, Peru, the third largest town. And that was a transformative, powerful experience as well, Adam.
Yeah, I would love to. You mentioned it. Let's dig into that a little bit. Kind of what led you to go down that path? I mean, you're talking about. And I'll tell you from my perspective, right? I'm hearing this, and it's something that I've talked to a couple people about, to trying to learn more about the psychedelic stuff, and seeing the studies behind it, and listening to some of the people who've gone through this. That are, I think there was a study out of a college or a university out in California. They brought like 15 or something like that special operations guys down to, I think it was Mexico, and they did this, and they had like the first go round, they had like 78%. Had lost all their symptoms, and then after the second go round, it was over 90% had lost all their symptoms. They'd gone through all of this stuff, all of these therapies, all of these things, and they were like, these guys, like, I don't know, like, what the heck are we gonna do? And then we send them down there one time, and they get over 70% of them are like cured, and it was like, man, oh man, this obviously is working. So, but there's still a stigma attached to stuff like that here, especially in America, where we kind of, we've got all of our schedule of drugs. And, as a former federal law enforcement officer, and I've arrested a lot of people for drugs and all these things. And it's like, boy, oh boy, like, how do I get through that? And then, and I'll throw in there the Christian side of the house, where it's like, boy, how do I deal with that on the Christian side as well? So I'd love to throw that big pile I just created in front of us and toss it over to your side to kind of attack.
That's a lot, Adam. Have you?
Yes, you're welcome.
Have you seen that podcast where Rick Perry comes on with the Hubbard guy,
the Joe Rogan,
Kentucky?
Yeah,
you already know. They answered my question.
Yeah.
And so watching that is powerful, right? Because when Governor Perry, this red-blooded conservative politician, governor of Texas, former Secretary of Energy for a presidential administration, and say, I have dedicated the rest of my life to helping military veterans, right? He had that powerful interaction with the famous lone survivor guy, Marcus Luttrell, helping them get healing that they need and deserve through Ibogaine. That's profound, right? That is just a shocker, right? And so my journey is interesting because I tried the clinical route, and the reason why I wanted to go this route was because the antidepressants, they weren't helping, they weren't working. And so nobody wants to be looking like the TV show The Walking Dead, going around all the time. And so I applied for Johns Hopkins clinical trial, got screened out on the phone, great program. They had a little administrative hiccups as well. Operational, what do you call that? Process improvement in their
no kidding.
in their customer service. But then applied for Ohio State University, got past the phone screen, flew up on my own dime to Columbus, Ohio, to go to the Ohio State University.
No, of course, yes.
And really great interaction there. Dr. Megan LaCroix from Berkeley, and just incredible research team. They did the full workup of blood tests and very extensive questioning. And then after the end of that 8 hours of questioning, I got to do a bonus round of more questions for homework that night on a Friday night. And then got back a month later and found out I wasn't accepted into the clinical trial. So a bit disappointing. And so I said, well, let's pivot and let's go the nonprofit route. And so I looked at Heroic Hearts Project. And then, like we said, in the military, there I was in Iraq, or there I was in Peru in a maloca doing ayahuasca.
Yeah, that's what was that experience like for you? Talk me through that. Like, I mean, you're going down there. You're kind of probably, I would guess, a little nervous, not really sure what to expect. So talk me through what that looked like.
Yeah, so it was a dozen or so military veterans from different branches: Navy, Air Force, Army. Our guide with the nonprofit was a guy named Diego, former Navy SEAL, right? And this gets really cool. He's from San Diego. So he's Diego San Diego.
There we go.
And we did extensive preparation. So I came off of the paroxetine, so Paxil. I've only taken 2 antidepressants in my life. I came off the sertraline for the previous clinical trial application. And those times were brutal. And so we did coaching and group integration calls on Zoom to build those relationships. So it was not just a get the psychedelic substance and go to your backyard and trip out or do some mushrooms or psilocybin or whatever. It was really well-structured, professional integration. They even published the Army or Veterans Psychedelic Integrative Guidebook for Heroic Hearts Project, which was really neat. So we all got copies of that to journal and kind of prepare. And then a clean diet, and coming off of caffeine was one of the hardest things you could do. And so then we traveled to Miami, and then to Lima, and then to Tarapoto, Peru. And there we are at the La Medicina Retreat Center. And it's really in the heart of the Amazon jungle. And so you ready to go deeper into the experience, Adam?
Yeah, sure.
So on Monday night, the actual ceremony takes place. But before you do that, you do flower baths. So these are not your, lay in a bathtub and rose petals and you're relaxing. These are with the cultural healers called the Shipibos. And they train like a doctor. They have been doing this. They have dedicated their life. They don't really get involved in other activities. Very focused. For the Western model of medicine, we could comparable to a doctor. And they take 6 or 7 flowers from the Amazon jungle, put them in this plastic basin, and then you come in your bathtub, in your bath trunks, and you sit in a chair, and it's around noon, and they pour this water with those flowers from the Amazon jungle. And people, according to the retreat center, they say they travel from all over the world just to do the flower baths because it's a type of healing and a type of protection in that particular tradition, in the Andean cultural tradition. So we've done the flower baths. That prepares us for the ceremony. Around 6:30 p.m., we had our teacher, and I'll keep the names out for respectful purposes or whatever, not asking permission. But she's from Brooklyn, and she would do a yoga class and breath work for about an hour. So now we're at 7:30, and the Shipibos come in their cultural garb, which is really neat. And they start smoking mapacho, which is like a tobacco. Not like your R.J. Reynolds or Altria of the American kind of how do they make it, like what make it so addictive and all the chemicals and stuff. So they're smoking mapachos. The sun is going down. We're deep in the 75-acre property, and it is just surreal. And they sing these shipibos for 4 hours straight. And Jorge and Samira were the ones that worked with us, and they each sing every person a song. So they go around, they sing a group song, they grow and sing an individual song. Here's what's powerful. Listen to this. Their worldview, they don't believe that they're singing. It's actually the spirits that are singing through them to heal. Now, when we're doing the actual medicine, the plant medicine, ayahuasca, it's important to remember and think how mind-blowing this is, that the Andean peoples in Brazil and Peru and Chile, they took this vine and then they mixed it with another root or something called chacruna. They smash up the ayahuasca vine and mallet it down, break it up, boil it until it becomes this thick substance, and then they mix it with the chacruna, and then that's the cup. And so you had a small, medium, and large. So we started out with a shot glass, and then you could do a double shot or the science beaker. And I called it the tall, the grande, and the venti. And I was like, can I get a double shot? They didn't like that, the whole Starbucks reference or thing, whatever. But, well, I took the first shot, and then you had the red light, because when you're doing psychedelics, your brain becomes way sensitive to sound and visuals. So if you shined a regular flashlight in the dark, when you have 12 people in a room that are on psychedelic substances, it feels like you're at a rave or some type of theme park at Disney with a movie going on and all that stuff that could be very distracting. So you use the red light if you wanted help or assistance. And so I'm sitting there for 45 minutes and it's not kicking in for me, trusting the process, right? This is what I signed up for. And we're here voluntarily, right? They're not pushing drugs or medicine on the participants. You flew from the United States to Peru to come here, right? And so we take, and so I do the red light special, and then she comes, the yoga teacher, the facilitator, and then the other guy comes, the Russian co-owner of the property. And so I'd asked for some, and so she gives me a quarter shot. So I take that. 30 minutes later, still kind of going around the Shipibo singing. They're called Icaros, those songs, the healing songs. And then it kicks in after one more, the third dose on the first night, which was a half. So now we're at 1 3/4, right? Relatively speaking. And here's what the Russian guy said. He says, taking ayahuasca is not 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + a half = infinity. So it's a different type of Western measurement, mathematics type of thing. So they were always saying, like, just go slow. And so that extra half right there, that got me to where the medicine kicked off like a rocket emoji, right? And so the first night was a lot of like visual, the traditional psychedelic patterns, but mine were very digital. And I was like thinking, you're very detached. And I was like, really yellow dots and very crisp, like the artistic themes of punctiliarism in the 20th century. And I was like, man, I've been on the screens too much. Like, I need to get off the computer, working in email and all these Zoom meetings and stuff. And then the anger guy came out. And I was like, F this, and F my family, and F my business, and F that. And I'm thinking at him, like, from this perspective of, like, why are you such an angry dude? You know, like, what's going on? And it's the plant medicine bringing up your issues. So that was just the first night. And that I didn't throw up in the little plastic bin that they had on front of the mat for everybody. Imagine the circle, and then everybody's faced inward around, and then they're singing the songs. So I only threw up when I got back to the room. It was about a 4-hour session. And then at the end, the Russian guy will say, okay, everybody, the ceremony is complete. If you feel okay, you can go back to your room. Right. And I had pretty good hand coordination and walking and stuff. You're still a little wonky. Going down the steps, it's like 100-foot descent through steps on the property. So that was just the first night.
How many nights do you have to do that?
Well, it's not that we had to. We had the opportunity to do it, but we did it 3 nights in a row.
Jeez. And it, like, progressively, did it get more and more intense, or was it more just like different issues coming up?
Yes. So one guy on our trip, no names, didn't make it. So he tapped out after the first night. Wanted to try to go the second night, just got too overwhelming. Okay, so we'll leave that as that. And then
too overwhelming, like too much stuff coming up, or just the feeling was just intense?
Yeah, all of the above. So we're in the Amazon jungle. We're eating a strict diet. We don't have like AC. This is not like the Marriott hotel. This is certainly not the Ritz-Carlton. And then whatever issues that this individual was dealing with, and the travel and coming off of medicine and caffeine, and just a lot of changes, right? So you've been in the military. You know what it's like to be out of your comfort zone, and then hoping, is this going to be over? Like, are we done yet? Like, is the roller coaster ride? Like, are we done?
Definitely been there.
Yeah, been there. You got the T-shirt too?
I do. I've got multiple of those T-shirts. Yes. Yeah.
and so the second night, the facilitator said, "Well, we'll move you up to the medium." So I got the double shot, right? And so that sped it up a little in the ceremony. We did the same thing, right? Flower baths, Shipibo singing, yoga, breath work, Shipibos, and then ayahuasca cup. So I take the bigger cup, kicks in a little hour-ish instead of the 2-hour delay, and you feel this kind of whir in your head. That's like your brain, like, processing the medicine and kind of your neurological, I call it, what happened to me, as we say in the Army, bottom line up front, I had a neurologic reset. So that reset my central nervous system, and the positive effects were that I didn't recognize this like when I was at the retreat center. It's kind of hard because it's so chill. There was no devices, there was no screens, no internet. We were just there having relationships, talking, processing our experiences, and eating healthy, clean food, salmon and sweet potatoes and fresh fruit and all that stuff. And so when I got back is when I realized, wow, like my fight or flight system is way decreased. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you in a second about my Fort Worth Zoo experience on Sunday, the day after I got back, and we tested that theory. And so sometimes things break theoretically, but especially when I have a lot of kids and like birthday cake and animals and losing your cell phone and all that stuff. But we'll get to that, Adam, if we have a chance. But the second night, I took the grande. And it kicked in. I didn't throw up. I didn't feel comfortable throwing up in the plastic bucket. Other guys, it's a purgative. Ayahuasca is a purgative. So there's a lot of vomiting. And they believe in that cultural tradition, that religious ideology, is that you're vomiting out your mental health issues, or you're getting out those demons. And so there was a true catharsis. I think I threw up maybe the second night in the bathroom in the Maloka. I can't remember. But continuing that neurologic reset, that healing process, some visual patterns and stuff like that. It's so nasty, the drink, that after I had the grande, the double shot, we're good. Like, let's just let it roll. Because you're nauseous, and like, why would you want to drink more of that substance that makes you feel like crap? But then once you throw up, you're like, this is worth it. You're just like, wow, something just happened. And then the third night, we're sitting in the morning preparing, And the Russian guy had another Russian partner who used to play chess with me, and I'm a good chess player, and he would beat me, and then I would yell at him and want to cuss him out because of my American, like, we're number one, we're the best. And he's like, oh, you're not really number one. Like, that's kind of your attitude as a culture. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, we do have, like, oh, let's win, let's dominate, and all that stuff. And, like, not every country believes the same things as Americans do. Mm-hmm. But that's neither here nor there. But good fun playing with him. But the Russian facilitator said, well, you should do a large. So now we're going into the science speaker category, the triple shot espresso. And so I kind of had to psych myself up for that. And, Army infantry, fought through Operation Iraqi Freedom, Petraeus' surge operations, in Baghdad, etc. So decent credibility, right? Resilience is kind of my strength. I may not be the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but I can certainly, we can grind it out, And so I said, okay, I'll take his advice. And so I went with the triple shot. I think maybe another dude or so did it too. We had this really guy who was like the super healthiest guy as well. He was an older guy, really fit, and had this really cool tattoo on his chest that had all these roses in the shape of a heart. And he's really health guy. Glad that he was on the Treb. He just brought so much wisdom and unique spirit and personality to the group. And so I did the triple shot, kicked in pretty quick. And what was interesting is that the third night was very sexual. And I won't get explicit or into the details, but I was like just asking questions and curious, what's going on here? And so process through that. I can't remember. I'd have to look in my journal for the visions. But fast forward, and Vlad, it's midnight, and he says, okay, the ceremony has ended, Sometimes you're laying down, it's your sleep time, and, you get out of respect and get up on your mat and pay attention to the Shipibo when they're singing to you and doing their healing stuff. And they did some really creative, insightful kind of things that just blow your mind. And then you lay back down or whatever you're doing, processing. But my trip wasn't over after the ceremony ended. Because remember, I took a triple shot of espresso. And for anybody who drinks, Starbucks coffee, sometimes that buzz just kind of keeps going, right? And so I walked down to the room and tried to take a shower. And then I started to think to myself, like, okay, we're good. God, we're good. Like, are we done? Is this over? And it wasn't over. And I laid down on my bed. And then I'm processing. I got the resetting the hard drive. And then it finally ended at 1:30 a.m.
I got like 47,000 questions I want to go through. How did you, so as I'm hearing some of this, and this is going to be just my more personal questions, just to kind of get my own brain through some of this. As a Christian, a chaplain, and you're talking about, their other, the Shipibo people and what their beliefs are and how they're all doing that. Did you feel any conflict there between your Christian beliefs and the way that they were doing that? Like that there was any sort of a conflict between those two belief systems? Obviously, you're not the one that's praying to whoever they're praying to, but if you have somebody that's praying to these people over you, like did you feel any sort of conflict in that at all?
So Wendell Berry said that there is no such thing as unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. And so I did not feel the conflict, and I'm going to take it to another level. We're going to really go out there, Adam. In that I argue and believe that God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity, can heal through any means possible, right? There's no limit that you can place on the healing purposes of God, His sovereignty, His dominion, His victory in Christ Jesus through the death and resurrection of His Son and ascension at the right hand of the Father. And so I mentioned earlier that I did some chaplain training. So let me flesh that out a little bit. In the military, it is now good for chaplains to have CPE, which is clinical pastoral education. And that was a program that was initiated in the early 20th century by a psychologically ill person named Antoine Boursin. And I won't give you the history of clinical pastoral education. But the bottom line up front is that this is a program that psychologically, clinically, spiritually trains people, ministers, whether they're missionaries or hospital chaplains or military chaplains, etc., or pastors, priests, to provide better spiritual support in a holistic way that they're non-anxious and non-judgmental. So it's very wide open, and some people with kind of more rigid theological or religious traditions struggle because it's hard for them to kind of let go of some of their doctrines or dogmas or closely, tightly held beliefs. And so having that training helped me to be able to examine different views. And Aristotle said that it's the measure of an intelligent person to be able to hold something in their mind without necessarily embracing it.
Yeah.
And so now let's get a little weird, okay? You ready?
Yeah.
There were two themes that came up, not just for me, but for the other participants and throughout the cultures. So I decided, contextually, brief note, that I purchased a book called The Ayahuasca Reader, which is one of the classic books on this medicine. And it looked at the hundreds and hundreds of years of the use of this medicine and how it was discovered in the Andean peoples. But it wasn't from the Western mindset. It was actually these reports and stories from the actual peoples. Now, there were Europeans and their colonialistic mindsets and all the different ideas and perspectives that they bring, and, you know, all this stuff from Europe that they brought over to the South America. Some of that stuff was terrible. But it kind of added that scholarly basis, so I knew I wasn't just floating in the ether of the Amazon jungle. So the two themes, back to my answer, was the snake and the plant. And so the snake was a theme, not just in my experience, but I remember they were like going through my vision and like kind of rushing out, a lot of them, which could be really creepy. But if you're detached, if you have a secure relationship with God, if you're kind of aware of what's going on and present, then you can reframe it or try to understand this symbolic imagery in a way that, like, maybe the devil is getting pushed out of the way, right? Like maybe God is using this plant medicine to kind of push out this PTSD symptoms that is kind of crippling and paralyzing me. We read in the Gospels, right, that when Jesus went into the different towns, like he would heal everybody. Like he would clear out whole towns, and that people were desperate. They were like bringing people to Jesus to be healed, right? And there was spiritual weird stuff going on in the gospel stories that we read about, right? Like they would recognize Jesus and the demons and say like, I'm not afraid of anybody, but Jesus, don't mess with me, you know? And he would cast them out or send them to a herd of pigs or whatever. The other theme besides the snake was the plant. And I described that audible sound, that neurological reset that was occurring in my brain. And sometimes when you close your mind, you can kind of feel like your brain and the kind of synapses or liquids or whatever's going on in your brain, you feel it. But this was kind of like almost like a shaking of one of those symbol thingies. And the plant was kind of like these leaves was like framing it around me. And I kind of felt like the plant medicine, like it was a way of like, it was healing my symptoms, like this neurological, and this is outside of your grid for your typical Western medicine paradigm. But if you're open to these experiences, I came back, I call it as Josh, I told my wife like Josh 2.0. So here's my two takeaways from these experiences, these kind of breakthroughs. Number one, I had an intention with my wife to snuggle more with her. It may sound simple, right? But that's something you can practically do in a marriage. And for me, I know my wife emotionally, that brings her comfort. That brings her emotional security. So that was one takeaway. Number two, as my views on parenting and discipline, this is really getting into interesting territory. No spanking for my children anymore. No spanking. And that's an evolution of my, and we can go all day on quoting Proverbs and stuff like that as well. But I came back and I told my wife that, and she's thankful and grateful for that. And we've practiced that. And that's non-sexual touch. That's snuggling, just, wanting to provide her love and support. And then I looked at my 4-year-old now, Micah, and I said, Micah, Daddy went on a trip. He's doing better. No more spanking. And his eyes, like he could tell like the relief or like his, oh, wow. And that was just such a powerful moment for me. And I haven't spanked them. There have been times I still want to spank my kids. They're away with their parents now, their grandparents, my parents. But those were two the breakthroughs that I had.
Wow.
So you've got the Christian stuff and kind of the is there any difficulty? And it just depends on a person's kind of maturity and where they're at and how solid they are in their doctrine and their community and all that. And then also, those were a couple of the breakthroughs that I had during that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's one of those things that, a lot of people don't have an issue, because of the society that we live in and how we've kind of grown up. Okay, yeah, you can give me morphine because I know that I need that for this pain. But yet, you talk about this plant medicine and it's like, oh, no, like now you're going down a different route. And it's like, okay, all right, guys, like, oh, you're perfectly fine getting morphine shoved into your body. What the heck, So, it's such an interesting dynamic that we have in this country.
Or fentanyl. One guy, special operations, got injured. I won't say names. And shared a story about how like the medical providers were saying, well, we're going to give you fentanyl now. And he's like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
It's an addictive substance.
Yeah, especially when you hear about what it's done to folks, right? Obviously, it's very, very controlled inside of the hospital, but still, like they'll throw fentanyl around like a son of a gun. But I am curious, just because you mentioned being in Iraq during the surge. Where were you at in Iraq, in Baghdad, and when were you there?
Yeah, so we were with 3rd Brigade, 2ID, Stryker Brigade combat team out of Fort Lewis, Washington. And we were at Fort Lewis, Washington, and we trained there. So it's 2-3 infantry, and then 1-2-3 infantry, our sister unit, and then 520 sites as regulars. And great leadership in that team, hardcore, right? I was in Alpha Company, a Stryker driver, so we were mechanized. And then we're in Mosul at Famarez initially, so this is 6 and 7. And then during the surge, we went to Baghdad. And I remember during one of our military memorial services, Petraeus and the command sergeant major with him attended one of those services. I'm a specialist at the time, right? I had a college degree, was paying off my student loan debt, and we had IEDs that were blowing up vehicles and small arms fire and mortars, and just a really challenging time, man.
Yeah, I was at FOB Loyalty in East Baghdad, 06 to 07, right near Sadr City. And the other day I was watching, what was I watching? American Sniper. And they were talking about going into Sadr City. And of course, when I was there at the beginning, we weren't allowed. Sadr City was shut down. Like, it was one of those where you'd roll by Sadr City and some guy, because they knew they couldn't do anything, that we wouldn't go in there. They'd roll by on a truck, launch a rocket, and then just drive back into Sadr City. And you were like, well, all right, and we couldn't do anything. And then I went out with the Stryker Brigade a bunch. I was a dog handler back in the day for the Air Force. So I was attached to the Army out there in Loyalty, and there was only 2 of us Air Force guys, and we were both dog handlers, and we'd jump in and out of whatever Stryker was there. I used to talk about how much I hated the Strykers, because we'd be in there, and there's like this stuff, like 15 of you guys in the back of this thing, and I'm sitting there with my dog on my lap, and we're like, what in the world?
They try to put the sandbags on the
like all the
RPG
stuff around. And then, you got the grates around the thing, but then you open the back of this thing, and you're like, well, let's hope nobody's ready to shoot, because there's nowhere to go. You got to fuddle out the back of this daggum thing, And I hated those things. Yeah. We were out on one mission one time. I'm going off on a tangent, but we were out on one mission one time, and that one of the Strykers had gotten stuck. Got a flat tire that got stuck, and we were out with some tankers as well.
T-shirt too.
Oh my goodness! So these tankers are sitting there, and the striker guys were too proud to ask the tank to help pull them out, and then the tank guys were like, "Well, we're not going to help you unless you ask," you know. So it's like we're out there. I think it was Christmas time. We had like this 4-day mission over Christmas.
Wow!
That was a bunch of cordon and search stuff, and it was like I think the first day of that 4-day mission. And I'm out there, and we're just stuck, like waiting. And we're out there for like an extra 2.5, 3 hours, just waiting. And then finally they asked, and the tank pulled them out in like a matter of 14 seconds. You know, like hooked the tank up, pulled the thing out, and we moved on. I was like, we could have done that 4 hours ago, you know. But it's funny because the next morning I woke up late. I slept through my alarm. Like I was supposed to be back out there at 5:30 in the morning to meet my striker to go out on this mission again, and I woke up late and I was like, what the heck? And I once I found out that I woke up and I ran over and I talked to some I don't know, some first sergeant or something. I don't remember who I was talking to, but I was like, hey, you know, like I slept through my alarm, and he's like. I think he was just so shocked that I was honest with him. He's like, this Air Force guy just ran up and told me that he overslept for a mission in a combat zone. Like, what in the world is he doing, you know? And I was like, that's what happened. I don't know what to tell you, dude, right? So he's like, he overslept. He looks over at one of the guys, and I was like, I did. I don't know. I mean, I'm one guy in a room. Like, if I just sleep through the alarm, it's not much to do, you know. But then I go out on that mission, and we end up. That was a rough. I mean, that was Christmas Day of 2006, and we had a bunch of attacks. Like we didn't. Our fob was known to get mortared like crazy. I mean, it got mortared on that day. 67 mortars landed on the fob. The fob was a small political prison. It used to be a political prison for Saddam, and it was getting destroyed there. And we were in the middle of riots out there. And we had pepper gas flying all over the place, and they're getting rocks pelted at us, and all sorts of stuff. And we were just like, and our platoon commander just kept backing us off and backing us off and backing us off. We weren't able to do anything, and then all of a sudden we were able to release non-lethals. But it was such a mess. I got back to the fob, and I looked at the fob. I was like, "What the heck happened here?" I said, "I thought we were dealing with everything out there, you know." But yeah, we were out there trying to look through Muqdad al-Sadr's folks, and it was just an absolute mess. Like we were chasing all of his guys down and bringing them in. Yeah, it was rough, but that's why I asked where you were when you came into Baghdad, because I went out with the 520th guys a bunch on the striker side.
Yeah, we were at Camp Spiker or the main at Biop, and I can't remember Spiker and some of the other ones.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Yeah, it was an interesting time for sure. When that surge came in and all the extra people came in, it was we loaded so many people inside of our fob. I was like, I cannot believe how many more people we added to this. We had this building called the J Dam because it got hit by 2 J Dams during the invasion. And so there's just big holes in the middle of it. And the Army was like, there's still some good rooms. The J Dam is I forgot what they call it for. It's a big missile that we would drop. And it just dropped right on the center of this building, 2 of them. So you can look at it.
Air Force bomb.
It's an Air Force bomb, yeah, that we dropped. And dropped 2 of them in the middle of that building. And then we had a bunch of Army guys living in there, but it was because it was a political prison and you're in Baghdad. They had all of these towers that they would stick all the prisoners in, and they were the tallest buildings around, and everybody knew that that's where we lived. So they would just, okay, there we go, and they would just aim their mortars at us and just launch them into our fob all the time. It was an absolute. I mean, we had everybody, like Oni Erno at the time, I think was the guy that was in charge, and
Ray
Oni Erno, yeah, and he. All of his people were like, nah, we're not going to loyalty. And we were like, what? And they were like, nah, it's too hot. We'll be all right up here at Biop. And we're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, it was, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. It was just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if he's the general, you got to keep him alive, you know? He's the one who has the common operating picture of the whole battlefield, you know?
Yeah, you're not wrong, you know? But none of his people would even come either. Like, we had almost no visits at all from anybody.
Wow.
We had one USO tour, and that was it. And if you can't tell, I'm a Patriots fan. And the one USO tour brought the 1985 Bears quarterback, and I'm forgetting his name right now. McMahon, yes. So that he came and signed a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, this football helmet right here is signed by the 1985 New England Patriots football team.
Okay.
Which was their first Super Bowl, and they got destroyed by the Bears at that time. And Joe Butler was their kicker. So I went up there and I said, I'm getting this autograph, but it's complete. I'm incomplete, like defiance of who you are, but I'm still going to get your autograph anyways, you know?
Yeah, we
But,
had
yeah, that was
Tito
fun.
Ortiz come,
Okay.
the UFC
That'd be
fighter
cool.
at that time, and I got to meet him at the MDR. And then one like regional or something country singer gal, she was real nice. So I took some photos with them, which was neat. I don't know if I even still have them, but that was cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I still have the other photos either, but yeah, after that I went to Afghanistan as a dog handler and got attached to a group out there.
Oh, wow.
So that was a completely different experience, especially for an Air Force guy.
Unfortunately,
You know, so.
that I didn't have to go to Afghanistan. Iraq was challenging enough, so then you went for round 2. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, for me, it was 8 months in Iraq, 6 months in Afghanistan. So it's not like the 15-month deployments that a lot of you guys were having
We're
to go through.
equivalent to one deployment for us, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, but yeah, when I got attached to group, what a whole different experience that was. Like, what an interesting world. What a change. I'm glad I went with Big Army first before I went with group. But man, what a different world.
Yeah, I've interacted with more special operations people just like in the community. We have people in Weatherford and Parker County here. And even on this recent trip, with one participant was special operations. One of the guides, as I mentioned, was a Navy SEAL. So those guys, and you hear more and more about that, Adam, and it's like, the divorce rate is so high in that community. It is mind-boggling, and the stress and kind of the trauma and the pressure is just. When I was Army infantry, I had a purpose. Like, God has called me to get self-discipline and leadership and responsibility. I signed up for the student loan repayment program, and I didn't want to go to airborne. I didn't want to go jump out of planes or air assault. I just want to do what I came here to do.
Yeah, I completely get that. I didn't know what I was like when I first joined. Both of my parents were Air Force, so I just kind of assumed I was going to be Air Force, and that's what I did. I signed up when I was 16 years old, and then took off, and that was it. But yeah, I figured I was going to stay in forever, and then ended up not. We got out, and then got married while I was in college, and then went back because my wife's military. So I went back in. But like, what a different. My life has gone in 14 different directions that I wasn't expecting it to go, including the business side of the house, right? So I was never would have expected to be a business guy. So this is a perfect transition, not on purpose, but I was very much a paycheck to paycheck enlisted guy. I had no idea that people saved money. I was just like 9 times out of 10, if you talk to a normal junior enlisted guy, they don't save money. Like you come back from your deployment and you buy a Corvette or a motorcycle or whatever, right? You only saved money over there because there was nothing to spend money on.
Or a Camaro.
Yeah. You had to get your Camaro because the Corvette was a little bit more expensive, right? I mean, if you were a sergeant, if you were an E5 or above, maybe you bought the Corvette, but But I when I got married to my wife, she had this magical thing called a savings account that I had never heard of before, and I was like, I don't understand why you save money. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you save money for? Like, you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, right? And now fast forward, I mean, I've had multiple businesses, a bunch of different apartment buildings. I am a Dave Ramsey coach. I help coach at my church for folks on getting them out of debt and all this stuff. And I'm like, what a complete shift my world has gone. I would have never expected it to go. So I'm curious how you kind of went from, going to college, going into, as an enlisted guy, getting your student loans paid off, to then becoming a chaplain and a financial advisor. Let's kind of fill some of those gaps in on how that path went for you.
Let's get you another Jay-Z quote. He says, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. And so, yeah, I always had an idea that I would be a business person, like when I was a kid. My mom, when she gave birth to me, she had a dream. And again, my mom, coming from like a nominal Catholic upbringing, she had a dream that I would be a priest. Isn't that neat?
Interesting. Yeah.
And so for business purposes, man, like when I was in high school and stuff, we were the Tommy Hilfiger Nautica thug crowd, right? Listen to rap music in Houston. I could tell you a story. Like I was, my biological father actually went to prison like for theft, right? He tried to rob a bank, is my understanding of what my mom has shared with me. Well, I carried that criminal, sinful tradition, and so I would steal stuff like at the mall, or remember that Spencer's and those lava lamps,
of course,
or the Scarface gangster T-shirt, Tony Montana.
Yep.
And so then I became a Christian in junior college. In College Station, I was at Blinn College, and then I got serious about my education. So I went into the Army, and I paid off my college debt, and then I got out and went into the chaplain candidate program. And so rather than coming back to Texas, I went to Phoenix Seminary, and I did 3 years from 2008 to 2010 for a Master of Divinity. And so I was about ministry and service and growing in my relationship with God, but I was researching stocks and different investments in the process. And especially that was in 2008-9, the global financial collapse, where that hit real estate prices even in Phoenix. I remember this Bible study couple, they bought a house that was like super cheap, but my story is going long, so let me tighten it up. And then eventually in 2016, got engaged to Stephanie in Houston, moved to Westlake in Dallas-Fort Worth, and started working at Fidelity. So that was my route, was that corporate that was my first kind of corporate job. And keep in mind, like, I'm mid-30s now. So I'd been volunteering at homeless ministries, studying theology, 2 graduate degrees in theology, did a hospital chaplain program, hospital worked a stint at a nonprofit. So still trying to figure things out. But I felt like God called me in this next season to financial services. So I was taking phone calls, Fidelity, then went to Edward Jones so I could do more financial advising. So now I'm getting the grips and got my certified financial planner. And then I worked a stint at an independent firm in Fort Worth. Kind of didn't quite align with the lead advisor there and the owners. We parted ways, launched my own business. Exponential Advisors, I feel I hit my sweet spot. And so we're a new business, Adam. We are slowly growing, right? That first year as an entrepreneur generally can be rough, but I have a solid marketing strategy, adding clients here and there as we go, and very excited. One of our superpowers is Bitcoin. And this could be a whole episode, but we provide our clients with transformative financial solutions, but we integrate digital assets and primarily Bitcoin into the planning process. And that's in investment planning, that's now in retirement planning, that's in tax planning, and that's in estate planning. And that can also, there are now Bitcoin-backed insurance products, right? And so for your listeners, if you are on zero on Bitcoin, generally, and this is not financial advice, full disclosure, this is just, we're having a conversation at a bar or on a podcast with Adam Barr, and if you're on zero, as we say in the Army, that's a no-go. That's the wrong answer, right? Because Morgan Stanley, according to Perplexity AI, I just saw yesterday their research report that they're anticipating that the dollar index, the value of the dollar, will decrease over the next 12 months by 9%.
Yeah, money sitting in your bank account is losing money every single day.
And that's due to the economic conditions and the fact that the Swiss francs and these other currencies are better safe haven assets because of the current administration and the tariffs and productivity and GDP, all of these different factors and inflation and the fact that, how much government debt do we have, Adam? The United States?
An insane amount. Yeah, insane
amount.
But
what is that number? Just ballpark.
What is it? I think it's like $3 trillion or something like that, right?
Higher.
Oh no, it's $1 trillion a year in just the interest. So it's
36.
Yeah, 36 trillion. Yeah, we're at.
So that's 36000 and keeps going.
Lots of zeros. Yes.
Yeah. So as Lynn Alden, she's the author of Broken Money, a highly recommended book, neutral economist, very thoughtful, well-researched. She explains that we are operating currently on a broken old currency, fiat monetary system. and that Bitcoin is the new monetary system, and that the train has left the station. And that applies not only to our debt, but the fact that with 21 million Bitcoin, the scarcity of this asset, and you can't make more it's $2 trillion in market capitalization. This is not like a small chump change, but it's only 2 trillion at this point, which many hardcore Bitcoin maximalists will say it's on its way to 10 trillion. It's potentially it could be 100 trillion market capitalization, right? We're seeing nation states adopt it. So the train has left the station.
Yeah, to push back a little bit, just ask some contrarian, or maybe not contrarian, maybe Bitcoin is contrarian, right? But to push back a tiny bit, it's like, okay, yes, completely agree that the dollar is in shambles. Personally, I think there's definitely a huge problem there. I think debt is probably the biggest threat we have to our borders, our national security, our everything, to our country. Our debt is by far on the top of that list for me. And that's as a former counterintelligence guy. Like, I'm China, Russia, definitely on there. Our debt is a massive problem. But do I look at something that was, electronically created, that's built on this thing? Yes, there's only so many of them, but they can be parsed out into all these tiny little pieces and all the things. But they're not backed by anything other than, again, like if we look at our stuff, right? This is backed by the good faith of the United States government, right? Okay. The Bitcoin is only backed by the people who are supporting Bitcoin as well, right? So we have to now support the people that are on board with Bitcoin more than we support the United States government on their dollar, right? And how do we make sure that we can have the faith in those people versus the faith in the government?
Yeah, so I have faith in the United States in its current condition, with our political leadership, our institutions, our traditions, our customs, our norms. I think we've had a great country, and I hope and I pray, as the Apostle Paul says in 1 Timothy 2, let all men and women lift up their hands and pray for those in authority, right? And so more than anything, more than complaining, more than criticizing, I think it's important to pray for the current administration, President Trump and J.D. Vance and the Supreme Court and our senators and our governors, because when you're in leadership at the top, people want to shoot you down, right? Like nobody cares about the small fry or the lower level leaders. All the attention goes to these national figures, right? And so with the Bitcoin protocol, it is, and this is getting, for your listeners, a little technical. I think I said for your readers maybe earlier, for your listeners. I love reading books, as you can see behind. I've read a lot of these too. They're not just there for a show. That's kind of my love language, is just having time to read books. But with the Bitcoin protocol, it's decentralized, so nobody controls it, right? So there's nodes and there's miners, and there is game theory with economic incentives that is built into the fundamental structure and design of this software. Okay, so that's what makes it powerful. And the software itself is not neutral per se, because software has values and ideas and ways of doing things and modes and approaches. However, there can't be a change to the underlying protocol without a consensus of those interested parties that are globalized and distributed throughout the world, it's called governance, right? Governance model of Bitcoin or other alternative coins, Ethereum, Solana, etc. And so there was an episode in the history of Bitcoin where they had a governance issue, the block size wars. People wanted to change it from 128 to 256 or whatever. That was a big issue, because people were like, no, it's monolithic, it's been working. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And so big debate, a whole huge big Bitcoin thing. So I would argue that the fiat system itself, whether it's the Chinese yuan, the ruble, the peso, etc., the pound, is that these fiat systems are fundamentally broken, right? And okay, so we have a couple options. So option number one is to keep the United States dollar, which could lead to as the global reserve currency, right? Well, there's such a thing that potentially a debt spiral could occur, right? Where we're unable to pay our debts. We just got downgraded recently by different agencies or different ratings. That could be bad, right? We don't want to be Argentina. We don't want to be, 20th century, Weimar Germany or hyperinflation. And so I'm not a doomer. Like, I'm not a prepper, right? Bitcoin is for preppers too. You can hold Bitcoin and still prep and do all that stuff. Option number two, well, what if gold? What if we go back from the 1970s when Nixon took us off the gold standard? And what if we go back to gold, which is this metal in the ground that's shiny and kind of bronzish, and it has a 1% to 2% inflation rate. Maybe technology gets better and they can mine it more, and that could increase the inflation rate, but it's pretty stable. That's option two. Or option three could be Bitcoin as a global reserve currency, which is discussed a lot in the Bitcoin circles and the podcast and sphere that I interact with. And so I don't know what the future looks like, but that's why I was quoting the Morgan Stanley report. And I could give you a whole slew of economic and statistical data and references. Bitwise is a company that I really admire. Matt Hoogan is the chief information officer. Puts out a lot of great newsletters and information there on Bitcoin. So at the end of the day, the bottom line is that I believe that Bitcoin is a sound and superior, a hard currency, a sound and superior form of money. And that's why I advise my clients to reasonably allocate and invest in Bitcoin, because leading statistical data indicates we've had a 75% annual return year over year. You have financial advisors that are trying to eke out an 8% return, or they tell their clients, you got 12% this year.
But I'll go back to you and kind of reframe a little bit of the question to kind of say, okay, but it is backed by, again, just the governance, right? That's the only thing it's backed by. So if the dollar's backed by just the good faith of the United States government, which again, could have a whole podcast on that. But in here we're talking about the good faith of the governance of Bitcoin, right? So what is it that's wouldn't that basically eventually be, or really is it already, a fiat currency? It's not really backed by anything, right? Just like our dollar's not really backed by anything.
So I would argue that it is backed. It's backed by energy. Let me break that down. So for your listeners, we're going to go a little bit technical, but I've had this conversation like 527 times. So I think I can make it simple for you.
Let's make it 528.
Yeah. And so here is, I wish I had a whiteboard if we were really advanced on Riverside. And so put a B right here, and the nodes, right? Those are the ones that verify their transactions and vote, and then the miners as well. So they process these mathematical computations on the blockchain. The Bitcoin, it's just X's and O's and software. And so the miners have an economic incentive to do these transactions, because every 10 minutes a block is produced. And then when they are winning and solve the mathematical computation the first, then they get the block reward. And so it started out initially as 50 Bitcoin every block, right? And then every 4 years, it is reduced by half. So then it goes to 25, okay? And that was from 2009 to 2013, and then half to 12.5. In 2017, and then half, 6.75, in 21. And so what that does is it takes energy, Adam, to process the miners and to do these complex mathematical computations that are very difficult to solve, but easy to verify. And so then they process the block. So I have heard that it's said that Bitcoin is not backed by anything, but I would argue that it is energy. It is digital energy that sustains the Bitcoin blockchain. And these miners, you're seeing them, they got banned in China, a lot of them, and then they came to Texas in the United States. And yes, there are political issues about them, building these solar factories and windmills, and people don't want them in their backyards in the country. But it's backed by the energy. And what about all of the energy? So we'll touch on the environmental thing, and we're going there, is that people will say, well, it uses enough, than New Zealand or whatever, more energy than this particular country or whatever. Well, if you think about all of the bank buildings, JP Morgan Chase and USAA and Navy Federal Credit Union and Bank of America and all of the mortgage lenders and all of these financial services companies, Fidelity and Bank, they use a bit of energy as well, okay? And so Bitcoin is actually scaling down, I would argue. And again, we could have a discussion on the energy issue, but I wanted to touch on, that's my view, it is actually backed by something.
So is it backed by energy only until all of them are officially released and mined, right? Because there's only a certain amount of them. So once they're all released, no longer needing to use that energy to mine them, now they're just out in the ether and ready to be exchanged and traded and all of that. So then what are they backed by?
Yeah, so that is an excellent point, that what's going to happen to the Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin protocol, once all the Bitcoin is mining. We're at 19.7, fact check this or whatever, you can Google, ChatGPT, etc. But it's because of the halving mechanism of the block reward decreasing every 4 years, less Bitcoin are distributed. And so it is scheduled that Bitcoin will not be completely exhausted of its supply until 2140. So we've got some room to run for the governance issues and to figure things out. And so after that time, and again, this is getting into kind of theoretical territory, but at that time, the transactions from processing the blocks will sustain the ecosystem. So it'll be like the transaction fees rather than the production and supply. And so if you play that out like logically, and I'm not an engineer by any means or a mathematician, but we're at 100,000 right now, and there's a fixed supply that is credibly enforced, that has zero downtime, that has been working since 2009, that the price will likely be way higher in the future, because we've got a strategic Bitcoin reserve by the United States. We've got the largest holder globally, I believe, is the United Arab Emirates. Russia holds Bitcoin. China, Argentina made it, legal currency. El Salvador, etc. Corporations are now using it as their corporate treasury. Rather than holding dollars, they're holding Bitcoin. You have Strategy. You have in the Japanese market, MetaPlanet, Exponential Advisors, a small business in Weatherford, Texas, has a Bitcoin corporate treasury strategy rather than we do hold dollars as well. But that's one of the ways also I advise small business owners is like, do you want to hold your corporate assets in something that is a melting ice cube? Or do you want to hold something that is a digital gold that is fixed, credibly enforced, and scarce and decentralized?
Nice. Yeah. All right. So as you're building out your business, you've got obviously experience in them. I'm going to pivot a little bit on a little bit more of the dad stuff. I told you these conversations can go all sorts of places. You never know where we're going to go.
I mean, we've talked about psychedelics. We talked about Bitcoin, and
Iraq,
Iraq, and Camp Harmony, and JDAD. You
never know.
Stuff like that.
You never know where we're going to go. So you're building out your program. I'm assuming you're working from home right now. Is that right?
Yes. This is Exponential Advisors headquarters, home office.
Love it.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. So I absolutely love it. But so what sort of involvement in the business are you bringing into your kids? Like what sort of conversations are you wanting to have? Obviously 7 and 5 are your two oldest, so they're not exactly ready to be talking about the blockchain and getting everything and all the stuff. So maybe you're dancing some things here and there. But what sort of intentionality are you having behind the conversations that you want to have with your kids and how you want to raise them with a financial mindset, a business mindset, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Kids pick up on a lot of stuff, right? And so
Truth.
first and foremost, I pray that my kids will know, love, and worship Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. And if God changes their hearts by the power of the Holy Spirit, I believe that will actually transform their relationship with money. I was recently on a podcast, Money and You, with Michelle Perkins, and it's all about guests come on and talk about their relationship with money, right? And the emotional aspects of that. So what I'm teaching my kids, they hear me listening to Bitcoin podcasts. They hear me and see me having these discussions with people in the community, just like we were having. Like, that was an example of respectful disagreement. Like, you may disagree with me on certain issues, but we can communicate in a way that respects each other's positions. And so we actually had our kids do a lemonade stand, an entrepreneurship opportunity in the community through the Parker Chamber of Commerce. And it is a program where you get them to go and set up a lemonade stand. And so my wife really helped out with this. She was getting the mango smoothies and bake some extra. She really loves baking, so pineapple upside down cakes and specialized Rice Krispie treats to go along with the lemonade and the smoothies. And we were all set to go at a local Toyota dealership. And then we got a last minute message that Lemonade Day has been postponed to August.
Lovely.
Yeah. So
lovely.
That is one initiative where, I've been traveling, whether it was for, the guest podcast in LA or for military duties or going on a psychedelic retreat. Daddy's been gone for a little bit for various purposes. Maybe one day I'll do a freestyle and go do a Taylor Swift concert, So Taylor, if you're listening to this podcast, would love to join you, maybe Kendrick Lamar or whatever. I'm not sure I have quite that talent, but maybe I can kind of keep.
I'm not sure I have quite that reach either.
T Swift or Beyonce. But yeah, we're really trying to do like this lemonade stand and, teaching them. They do their chores and they get incentives, money. And so they're asking questions and like, JJ, you're kind of like daddy. Like, you're all about the money. Like, life is not all about money, JJ. So pump the brakes. And then Hudson, if Micah gets money, who knows what's going to happen to that? He's 4 years old. That could end up in the laundry or in the dryer.
For sure. Yeah. Yep. Trade $5,000 for an Oreo cookie because, priorities, you never know where that's going to go. Yeah. It's ridiculous. But,
or chocolate candy.
So when you and your wife got married, or as you guys were dating, sort of what conversations did you guys have about how you wanted to raise kids, and what did you have about conversations about money and faith and all of that? Kind of how did that set up for you?
Yeah, so we were dating in Houston. I had a 1-bedroom apartment. She had moved from Missouri. She's a registered nurse. And I described my debt that I had going out of TCU and signing up for the Army as a mountain of college debt. $59,000 that I paid off, signing up for Uncle Sam. Well, she had Mount Kilimanjaro, okay? So at the University of Missouri, she did undergraduate and then a master's in public health, and realized she didn't want to do grant writing. So she did an 11-month intensive program in Kansas for nursing. And so she came in with $95,000 of debt. And so, everybody likes a good challenge, right? And so I'm 35 years old at this point. So this is not time to be super picky and choosy, And so, we started dating like on our second date. Like, I was like, we're good, praise God. Yeah. And I had done eHarmony for a long time, and she did it one day.
And there you were.
And picked me. Yeah. Praise God. So we talked about that, and I said, listen, like, I'm working in the Texas Army National Guard as a chaplain candidate. I'm working at a nonprofit that is not even helping veterans. It's terrible and has a narcissistic personality disorder manager. But she supported me. Even, I was getting like food stamps at that point. I have, no shame in my game. But I would go to Whole Foods Market and shop with those food stamps. So bougie, right?
Yeah.
But we trusted each other. We talked about money. That wasn't an issue. Like, she wasn't like, oh, this guy doesn't have a full-time job. And then when we got engaged, then I got the job at Fidelity Investments with good benefits and in the financial services industry. And so that was the start. And we were intentional about paying off debt. And then on the last deployment in support of Operation Inherent Resolve, I was teaching a Dave Ramsey class to some soldiers, through Ramsey Solutions, and we paid off the last bit of her college debt, and we had paid off her Honda Odyssey minivan, and then we bought a Toyota Sienna, the hybrid. So we got
upgraded.
Look
at you.
Yeah. And then we were able to move from Louisville to buy some property out in Weatherford, out more to the country. And people would tell me, Adam, they say, well, you're moving out to the country, you're going to have to get a zero turn. And I said, oh, okay, tell me more about that. So I'm like researching, riding lawnmowers and everything. And we've been good. I did take some debt here for the business as well, from a local bank. Have a good professional relationship with Plains Capital Bank. And so, I think the responsible use of debt is appropriate at a minimal fashion. But I think that you have to be intentional about your discussions of finances, and to be on the same page is super helpful, because some spouses and partners are not, and that can create conflict in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And that's something that I encourage everyone. I'm borderline thankful that my wife did not ask me about finances, because maybe she wouldn't have married me. But I do highly recommend that folks do talk about finances. Thankfully, I was not in debt. I was going to college. I was using my GI Bill, so everything was getting paid for. And she was an ROTC person, so she went through ROTC and then got a bunch of scholarships, paid off of all of her college pretty early. She actually left college with no debt. She paid it all off while she was in there, and she was able to pay for her car with the scholarships and all sorts of other stuff. So she was like when she was, to give you a small idea of her, she was TDY down to Bogota. So she's down in Bogota making like $100 and whatever a day per diem, and she's like making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in her in the JW Marriott hotel. So she's in like the 10th floor of the JW making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and eating them. But I'm like, you can spend money. It is okay, but she didn't know any better, because that's what she saw her whole life was like. Her mom came from Cuba and her dad came from Spain. So they were very much like, hey, hoard the money, going back to that emotional connection with money that you were talking about on your other podcast you mentioned. But, so that's what she saw. And I saw you just spend your paycheck. Like, that's what you do. Like, that's why you get paychecks, is to spend them. And so the two of us together, like, what a mess that was at first. But she really taught me a lot as far as like, she lit a fire that I didn't know was there. Like there was like a kindling there that I didn't know, and then she learned how to just strike that match just right. Because she told me, she was like, well, we should buy like real estate. And she thought to herself, what the words that came out of her mouth was, we should buy real estate. The words she thought she was saying was, we should buy a house that we can have as an investment property. And what I ended up doing was, we're going to go buy apartment buildings. And she was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I said, well, you wanted to buy real estate. This seems like really good real estate. So this is what we're going to do. She's like, no, I was thinking like a house down the street, that we can rent out. I was like, no, apartment buildings. Let's do that. So what a world that has
Texas,
changed and opened up.
Go big or go home,
Darn right. Go big or go home. Yes, for sure. Absolutely agree with that thought process. But to go back to what I was saying, I completely agree that the conversations need to happen before you get married, and they don't stop after you get married either. Like, just keep never ever ever stop communicating. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what that was like for you. You mentioned the no spanking thing with your kids after the ayahuasca, but What sort of changes did your wife, like if I were to like sit down with your wife right now and have a conversation with her, what would she say were some of the changes that she's seen in you over the last 8 years, but especially after that ayahuasca experience?
Oh man, that's scary. So my wife has been through thick and thin, and so we have a healthy marriage relationship. We have our moments at times, and each person, has their strengths and limitations in the relationship, right? There are things that I do that really annoy her, and there are things that she does that really annoys me. I think she would see that I have been intentional. So the most important thing that I bring to the table is a passionate relationship about God. And so as a spiritual leader, love covers a multitude of sins, right? And so the fact that I love God, that I'm moving closer to him to honor the Son of God, to give him glory, she sees that, she feeds off of that, and she gets her strength. She feels secure, loved, respected in our relationship, even when I act like a jerk, when I'm impatient, which is a big struggle for me in my personality type, and as a sinful human being. And she sees the way that I am intentional about raising. We have a goal for our children to raise them in the fear, knowledge, and love of God, right? We want them to have those attributes, to have those values. And so I think that she sees me getting counseling, trying to deal with the fact that the fact that I have a strength that I can do freestyle rap, just like off the top of the dome, audio, very sensitive to music, but it's also very sensitive to the sound, and so that fight or flight can kick in. So I wear earplugs a lot. I even have like specialized earplugs that I order on Amazon that kind of look stylish and black, and you can fit them in and that types of thing. Or when I go to the gym, so I'm very sensitive to sounds, and the ayahuasca retreat has kind of helped dial that down, but it still is a present issue. And so I think that not reacting and kind of being snarky or snippety, I think my wife so that's a struggle in our relationship. And so I'm tempted. I want to kind of throw my wife's baggage out there, but I'm going to keep it on my end right now.
I'm not talking about. I don't want to bring that. No.
I value being fair and equitable. So part of me was like, well, we need to balance this out,
You already made a comment earlier that I wanted to make a joke about, and I didn't. You were talking about how you were 35, and you were like, boy, my options are going down. I was like, oh, you're saying your wife was like the lower level of the options? Is that what's going, man, oh, man, you're running out of options?
No, I didn't mean to say it like that. I just meant like, if you haven't been married and you're like, oh, let's not go down that route. But so we're all good.
Yeah. That's why I didn't make the joke about it. I was like, I don't think that's what he actually meant, but it would have been funny.
That's going to take us into, not helpful.
Yeah. Well, so what are the next steps with your business where you're at right now? What are you trying to build towards? You mentioned kind of slowly bringing on clients. What are you trying to build towards? What's your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal that you're trying to chase down with your business?
Yeah, so ultimately our mission is to provide transformative financial solutions. Like I said, we're using comprehensive financial planning. We're integrating digital assets into the planning process with our the clients that we work with. Army, to keep it simple, Army veterans, ABCs, busy mommies, right? They're doing more of the heavy lifting on finances. Fidelity Research indicates that managing more of the money in the household. And then Christian leaders, Army chaplains, people I've worked with, clients to help them get to a place where they don't even have to raise funds, right? Where they can self-sustain ministry. And so that's the mission. The vision is in the next 5 years, 100 clients, right? And then in 10 years, 250. And so you might think, well, why don't you want to grow to 1,000? Why don't you want to grow to like this have all these advisors under you? Sometimes less is more. Right? And so ultimately my goal, Adam, is to do and build an ethical and sustainable business And I said transformative financial planning. So that means asking the deeper questions, doing the technical term in financial planning is called lifestyle planning. And George Kinder was a pioneer in that area, where it's rather than just giving them products or solutions, but going deeper into their values and who they are, and having that, attending those funerals, having that impact on their lives in a God-honoring way. And if you're not a Christian, you can still be a client of Exponential Advisors. Just like I'm a chaplain, not all of my soldiers in the unit are the ones that I provide spiritual support to are Christians. Actually, not many of them are in this day and age.
Kidding.
But that's what I'm passionate about. And, I learned that I'm pretty good with personal finances and coaching and helping others in a non-judgmental, non-anxious way. And I've seen transformation. For example, helping people, this is one issue, long-term care, where the average price of a semi-private room in Texas, the annual cost is $90,000 to $100,000 a year. And the average duration of a stay is 2.5 years. So I hope that you have a good retirement plan, and I hope you have good investments if you're going to self-fund that particular long-term care insurance strategy. Or you can get a permanent policy with a hybrid, long-term care feature, a rider that could cover that. And you can actually take life insurance benefits without actually dying. So those are cool products and solutions, not even to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and, that type of thing. But just doing the basics of investment planning, insurance planning, retirement planning, estate planning, tax planning, that and all of the subdomains and sections and taking people through that planning process, can be powerful. And that kind of sounds overwhelming, but that's what we do on the back end. We're just developing that relationship to collaboratively work together.
For sure, and I think that the transformational part that you talked about, I think is by far where folks need to be. Like if you're not, we talk about it in the business world a lot as far as like transforming your business and all this stuff, but your personal life needs to be like get all that stuff in order. Have all the trust set up, have the right financial vehicles for what you need for your situation. It's one of those things that you can go on YouTube and figure out what this means or what that means, but does it actually work for what your goals are, what you need, where you're planning to be, what your situation is?
Right.
Like, okay, are you going to have to take care of your parents when they retire, or are you going to have your kids take care of you, or are you going to set the plan up to be able to take care of yourself? Are you going to be able to make all these things happen? And blah blah blah. There's so much involved in it. So I love that you're doing that, and I love the clients that you're targeting. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And Army people need as much help as I could possibly get. So please help them out. Take it slow with them. As you know, you are an Army guy. So take it slow with them, but they need a lot of help. The poor guys.
It's been jokes on the retreat as well, because we had multi-branch people. So that was good being in that environment, hearing some of those ones that you hadn't heard before. Or, wow, that's the angle on the Marine Corps.
That's what's your favorite flavor of crayon type of thing? Yeah.
Oh yeah, they brought that one up.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my
There's
jaws!
A joke
We're having so much fun. My jaws are from smiling and laughing. What a good conversation, man.
Yeah. We were out on a camping trip with this like basically like a Christian Boy Scouts, since Boy Scouts kind of went off the rails for a little while. But so it's called Trail Life. So I was out there this camping trip with Trail Life with my kids, and they were talking, wow, look at the stars. We had these folks come out with these big telescopes, like these massive cool telescopes that would like show you the image on your iPad, and you could check. I mean, it was really cool. Like this stuff was awesome. But I was talking to this other this Army guy, and I was like, oh yeah, like the military, they're all about stars, right? I mean, it's the Army and the Marine Corps, they sleep under them, and they, that's what they, the Navy, they guide their ship by stars, and the Air Force, like we rate our hotels by them, and that's just kind of what we do, we're fancy like that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It was a blessing for me to be able to deploy with the Army, but never have to have Army on my chest. It was nice to not have to be a part of that.
Keep in mind that I'm a chaplain, so my goal is always to promote unity and harmony and peace, even among the branches.
No, I'm here for division. Let's make it happen.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Joshua, it has been awesome. Is there anything that you wanted to hit on that we have not touched yet? I mean, we had a bunch of different things, but I don't know if there was anything that you were like, hey, I definitely want to talk about this. What have we missed in our conversation?
Maybe can I drop some bars?
Yes, absolutely. Let's hear the rapping chaplain make this happen.
Okay, so a little draft. Now, this is not a freestyle, okay? So hang in there with me. But I just want to give, a shout out to the BizDad Podcast and, just have some fun for a little bit. Yo, welcome to the BizDad. Pull up a chair. We're fatherhood and business. Breathe the same air. Navigating markets while I'm teaching life lessons. Dropping knowledge. Making bold impressions. Kids by my side, family's my drive, balance and dreams, gotta hustle to thrive. Crypto and finance, yeah, I keep it real clear. Certified planning, got no room for fear. Honor God first, provide and protect. Serving my clients, earning respect. Digital assets, Bitcoin on lock. Veteran precision, strategy stock. From startup struggles to exponential growth. Feasibility tested, I'm keeping my oath. Networking, connected, collaborative minds. Bootstraps, dreams, opportunities align. It's the BizDad show where the hustle meets home. Where strategies grow and kids never alone. From military service to financial might. I'm living proof you can balance it right. Not just surviving, thriving, indeed, empowered by purpose, planting each seed. Family first, yeah, that's my mission. BizDad hustle, clear-eyed vision. Outro, we out, baby. So tune in, close, grab wisdom and laugh. BizDad Podcast, paving the path. Family, faith, business, all intertwined. This is BizDad, elevating your grind.
Dang, you wrote all this stuff up for the podcast. That was awesome. Well done. Well done. I had to mute it because you would have heard my kids in the background, like playing around back there the entire time you were going. But that was awesome. Well done, Joshua. The rapping chaplain at it again. Do you do one of those for all the podcasts you jump on?
Yeah,
or am I special?
It just depends. Some are better than others, and if I take my time, sometimes write it out or edit it, then it can come across well. Or like, I feel like the last one I did was kind of a little bit off. It just depends on the crowd and, that conversation. Some people, if they're ready or not ready for it. But, my goal at the end of the day, Adam, is to come on here, like I said, and to provide value to your listeners. I am in a good place for our family and for my faith and my community. And so at the end of the day, and when I wake up and I say, praise God. I want to live another day to love God and have a positive impact on the community and serve others.
Absolutely love it. Just like the sign above you says, love God, serve people, make a positive impact. I absolutely love it. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to have to, that little rap is definitely going to be one of the shorts for sure that we have go out on YouTube. So I'm looking forward to that, to seeing how that, how much traction that gets. So
let me give a shout out if you don't mind. Just tell people where to find me.
That's the next question, please. I'd love to find out how they can get a hold of you.
Here was my impatience. I just needed.
Yes, slow it down. Jeez, I'm gonna take care of you. I promise.
I just gave the freestyle, and then I get a little nervous, and the snakes are coming back. So we have, for the listeners and for military veterans out there, you can check out our resource that we have, a 10-page valuable resource for financial freedom for military veterans. And that is at exponentialadvisors.net. And then specifically for the BizDad Podcast listeners, you can check out our website with the landing page, exponentialadvisors.net/media. And that is where to find us. I'm coming off a Substack, and FYI, I'll be launching a new newsletter, and that will be called Exponential Purpose, coming up.
Absolutely love it. That's phenomenal stuff. Thank you so very much for sharing that. Everybody, please, if you enjoyed this conversation, definitely reach out to Joshua if you're looking for somebody to be able to help support you in your financial planning, or if you're looking for an independent rep, make that happen as well. So definitely, Joshua, appreciate you jumping on. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm glad we were able to have it and make it happen. For those of you listening, please comment below. Let us know what your favorite part was. Share this episode with somebody that you think would get something out of this. We obviously covered a lot of stuff in this conversation, so please share with anybody and everybody you think it'll be valuable for. Joshua, we'll see you later. Everybody else watching and listening, we will see you on the next show.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.